Every story has a Marcus. The partner who stood beside you when things went wrong. The cellmate who slid a map across the floor in the dark. The neighbor who brought a beer and asked no questions. The man behind the wall who kept tapping back. You've seen him before. Different face. Different role. Same name. This is his story. His name is Marcus Webb. And it doesn't begin in a prison cell. Not with a verdict. Not with the 14 years. It begins with a man who had a name, a career, and a life that made sense. And then a very specific Tuesday morning arrived. The morning when everything stopped making sense and never completely started again. This is the full story. From the beginning. Marcus joined the FBI at 26. He passed every test. Top 3% of his academy class. Instructors wrote notes about his pattern recognition. About his unusual ability to hold contradictory information in his mind without forcing a premature answer. One instructor wrote, Marcus asks better questions than most agents twice his experience. Marcus filed the note away. He never mentioned it to anyone. His instructors noticed that too. His first assignment was the Washington field office. His partner was a man named Delgado. 12 years on the job. Delgado didn't teach Marcus through lectures. He taught him through 2 years of shared cases, shared coffee, and shared silence. Piece by piece, Delgado explained what the job actually was. Not what the academy said it was. His theory came slowly, never all at once. Federal law enforcement isn't about truth, Delgado said once. It's about provable truth. And the difference between those two things, that's the entire job. You can know something completely and still be unable to use it. You can partially prove something and close a case. Learning to live inside that gap without letting it corrupt your relationship with the real truth. That's what separates the agents who last from the ones who don't. Marcus took that seriously. He built his cases carefully. He documented everything. Soon he became the agent other agents called when a case actually mattered. The one whose notes were airtight. Whose evidence chains would survive cross-examination. By 31, Marcus already had a reputation. Rodriguez entered his life through a joint task force in Miami. Money laundering. Rodriguez worked for the DEA. He was faster, more instinctive, comfortable inside gray areas. At first, Marcus found him frustrating. Later, he found him instructive. Rodriguez made leaps Marcus wouldn't make. And those leaps were often right. Marcus explained everything, step by step. And he was right about 60% of the time. But together, their success rate was higher than either of them alone. The Miami case closed with 8 convictions. After the handshake, they both understood something. After the handshake, they both understood something. This was the beginning of a partnership. Over the next 2 years, they worked 3 more operations. A narcotics network in Houston, a money service business in Chicago acting as a cartel front, and a human trafficking operation that required 6 months undercover. It became the largest trafficking bust in the region's history. After Chicago, Rodriguez made a call. He said something Marcus never forgot. He said something Marcus never forgot. The thing about working with Marcus, you always feel like you're operating at full intelligence, like nothing is being hidden from you. Most people simplify reality to what they think you can handle. Marcus gives you the actual situation and trusts you to handle it. Marcus didn't know how to respond. He just said thank you. Rodriguez laughed and hung up. At first, Marcus didn't notice the change. How could he? But in year 3, a raid went wrong, badly wrong, in ways that could still be explained by bad luck. But Marcus had seen compromised operations before. He filed the observation away. He watched. He waited. Rodriguez began losing weight. His eyes changed. A kind of hypervigilance appeared. Not the useful kind that comes from experience, the brittle kind, the kind that comes from something else. Marcus watched. He waited. Eventually, the pattern became certain. It happened on a Thursday evening in a parking garage. After a debriefing, Marcus walked Rodriguez to his car. Before Rodriguez could open the door, Marcus placed his hand on it. He looked at him. Long moment. Then Marcus said 4 words. I know what's happening. Rodriguez looked back at him. 30 seconds passed. They said nothing. But inside those 30 seconds, several entire conversations happened. Then Rodriguez told him everything. Marcus handled it exactly the way it should be handled. He placed Rodriguez into a recovery program through channels that would not immediately trigger a formal investigation. He covered Rodriguez's exposure at work, created space until Rodriguez was stable enough to face the process on his own terms. Terms that wouldn't automatically end his career. Marcus became his handler. Months later, he watched Rodriguez remove his badge. They shook hands. Marcus left first, so he wouldn't have to watch Rodriguez get smaller in the distance. 6 months later, Marcus received a call. Not a promotion. Something else. A recruitment interview. Different building. Different acronyms. They asked what he wanted to do with the rest of his career. Marcus said yes. At 31 years old, with 5 years of federal law enforcement experience, it felt like the obvious next step. He had no idea what the next level would cost. His new partner was named Cole. They were assigned together during Marcus's 3rd week. Cole had 7 years in the Directorate of Operations. He spoke 3 languages fluently, 2 more well enough to be dangerous. And he carried a particular kind of intelligence, the kind that appears as relaxed confidence, not performance, real understanding. Within a month, Marcus realized something. Cole was one of the most genuinely decent people he had ever met in federal service. His decency wasn't soft. It was principled. Cole believed in the mission the way some people believe in religion. Not naively, but with a full understanding of what the work required, and a willingness to pay that price. For 7 years, they ran operations together. Syria, Eastern Europe. 18 extremely complicated months in Southeast Asia. The kind of operations where decisions had to be made that both men had hoped never to face. They trusted each other completely. The kind of trust where being wrong would be catastrophic. Marcus knew Cole's wife's name. He knew the specific way Cole explained intelligence analysis, always starting with what he didn't know, building carefully toward what he did, never overstating certainty. Marcus knew Cole brought soup when someone was sick. He knew Cole kept a photo of his daughter on his desk, a frame she had made in elementary school. He knew Cole took the hardest assignments because someone had to. He knew that if you were in trouble at 2 in the morning in a foreign city, Cole was the person you called. Marcus knew all of this, and none of it helped when things went wrong. The Syria operation collapsed. Assets were compromised. Operatives were burned. 3 people were arrested by a foreign intelligence service. An investigation began. It lasted 11 months. Someone inside had leaked information. The evidence was precise. It pointed to a specific workstation, a specific access pattern, a specific travel history. All of it pointed to Marcus. The counterintelligence investigation began on a Wednesday. By the following Tuesday, Marcus was sitting in an interrogation room, the same kind of room where he had once asked the questions. Now he was answering them. Questions he had no answers for. He maintained his innocence. Because he was innocent, he searched for a mistake in the evidence, a clerical error, a misattributed access log, something logical that would end the nightmare. But there was no mistake, because the evidence had been deliberately placed by someone who knew exactly how Marcus worked, someone who had watched him closely for 7 years. Marcus didn't know yet that it was Cole. That realization would come later, and it wouldn't help. He was given a choice: resign quietly, recuperate, walk away with his pension, or fight it. Years of classified legal proceedings. A career turned into evidence. A process he would never be allowed to fully see. Marcus was 38. He spent 3 days sitting in his apartment trying to find a path where fighting this worked. He couldn't find one. The evidence against him carried his own professional fingerprints, placed on things he had never touched. On the 3rd morning, he accepted the deal. Cole appeared while Marcus was clearing his desk. He said it would all work out. Marcus looked at him, nodded. He still didn't know. Marcus placed the last box in his car. He sat in the parking garage for 40 minutes, the engine off. Then he drove home. Over the next 3 months, he applied for 43 jobs. 2 callbacks, 0 offers. Background checks kept returning the same problem, and he couldn't explain it without explaining everything. By the 5th month, he was behind on rent. That's when Reyes found him. Reyes had a talent for identifying people whose abilities exceeded their circumstances and whose circumstances had made them flexible about certain laws. He was professional. He explained the work clearly, the pay clearly, the risks clearly. He didn't pretend it was something else. Marcus thought about it for 3 weeks. He ran every alternative through his mind. The math kept returning the same answer. His savings would last 4 more months. His skills had value, just not in markets that required background explanations. This wasn't a choice between good and bad. It was a choice between different kinds of bad. 1 month became 3. 3 became 6. The work became more specific. The money became better. Marcus understood exactly what he had become part of. He simply avoided looking at it directly. When the legal risk became serious enough, Marcus hired a lawyer. He visited the lawyer 3 times. On the 4th visit, something changed in the lawyer's eyes. A calculation appeared. A small misalignment between what a lawyer should say and what this lawyer was saying. A letter arrived later. Marcus brought a folder to a coffee shop. He calmly laid out what he knew. The lawyer's face changed in the way faces change when they realize a door is already locked. Then honesty appeared. Real honesty. Debt, desperation. The kind of arithmetic that leads to terrible decisions. Marcus listened. He understood that arithmetic very well. He had been doing it himself for 8 months. He made a decision, one that cost him something. 3 months later, a federal investigation closed around Reyes' network. Marcus's name was on the list. He had 48 hours before the list became arrest warrants. He didn't run, or at least he didn't run well. He had worked too many fugitive cases. He knew run. It almost never helped. They found him in a motel in Delaware 11 days later. Federal charges. Conspiracy, association with a criminal enterprise. The old CIA investigation was folded into the case. Marcus became a number on a docket. His public defender had too many cases. Prison was an 8x10 cell. His cellmate was named Garrett. Garrett gave him the same orientation Delgado had once given him. The real rules, not the official ones. Marcus listened. He mapped the environment the same way he once mapped criminal networks. Old habits, new terrain. He began studying law. He had time. And the prison library, he read everything about wrongful convictions, evidence, tampering, prosecutorial misconduct. All the categories he knew existed in his own case. He built a theoretical legal argument, not knowing yet what he would do with it. 6 months later, a new inmate arrived. Young. First time inside. The look of someone whose bail math had failed. Marcus recognized the situation from both sides. At first, he just explained the basics, the unwritten rules. Which guards were reasonable. How to survive the first month without making enemies. The way Garrett had helped him. Eventually, they talked about the man's case. Marcus began noticing something. The charges didn't match the person. So Marcus began building something else. A map. It took 2 weeks. He drew it from memory, every exit, every camera, every timing gap. On a Tuesday night, he pushed the map across the gap between the bunks. "You're welcome," he said to the ceiling. The escape worked. Marcus heard about it through quiet channels. 7 months later, Marcus had 3 weeks left before his own release. Then a patrol car stopped him. An outstanding warrant he hadn't known existed. An old robbery charge. Under state sentencing law, it meant 32 more months. He did the math instantly in the back seat. Later, he sat in county holding quiet, thinking about the map he had drawn, thinking about the choice he made, and knowing it had been the right one. You don't get to make only the good choices and still be the person you are. Solitary confinement came later. 7 months total, 2 separate stretches, a 6x9 cell. Lights that never changed between day and night. Meals passed through a slot. The only human contact was the guard counting. 47. 47. Meaning you still exist. Marcus developed a habit. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps. At first it was just something to do with his hands. On the 5th day, someone tapped back. 3. Pause. 2. Marcus lay there with his hand on the concrete wall. Feeling something he couldn't name, somewhere in the building was another person who had discovered the same rhythm. They began speaking through the wall about time, about silence, about how silence eventually becomes something usable. One Tuesday, the tapping stopped. The other prisoner had been transferred, no warning. Marcus sometimes wondered if the tapping continued somewhere else. He hoped the other person found something else to count. Later, another charge arrived. Accessory to prison escape. Because of the map, Marcus was transferred to Virginia. Death row. He was 42. Next door was a man named Davis. Davis had been on death row 9 years already. He understood new arrivals. Over months, he explained how life worked there. The sounds, the guards, the rhythm of waiting, they spoke through the wall, sometimes for years. Davis talked about his daughter, about the way her eyes changed between childhood and 17, about the father he had hoped to be, and the father the evidence suggested he became. For years, Davis never talked about the crime. Marcus talked about law. He had studied it for 6 years now. He understood federal procedure better than many lawyers. Sometimes he explained appeals, the categories of evidence that could reopen cases. In the 4th year, Davis finally told the truth. 2 a.m, a confession he had hidden to protect his daughter's image of him. Marcus listened. When Davis finished, Marcus tapped. 3. Pause. 2. The signal. I heard you. You're not alone. Davis received a temporary stay. Marcus received an execution date. A lawyer named Clara Oe wrote him a letter. She worked for a wrongful conviction nonprofit. She had been studying his case for 8 months. She believed something was wrong with the digital forensic evidence. CIA access logs, file timestamps. CIA access logs, file timestamps, metadata patterns that didn't hold up under modern analysis tools. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it and placed it under his mattress. He waited 2 days before reading it again. Hope was dangerous, but eventually he wrote back. Clara was meticulous, relentless. The case took 3 years. Digital forensic analysis, legal arguments, court skepticism. The system resisting the idea it might have made a mistake. During those 3 years, Davis's execution date arrived. Marcus pressed his hand against the wall the night before. Davis pressed back. They stayed like that for a long time, not speaking, just the pressure of 2 hands through concrete. Davis was executed at 6 a.m. Marcus knew the moment. The building changed. For a week afterward, Marcus tapped the wall each morning. 3. Pause. 2. He never expected an answer. He just refused to let the silence be absolute. Marcus kept a list, not on the wall, in a drawer. The wall was reserved for people who made it out. The drawer held the others. Marcus was 56 when the court finally overturned his conviction. He walked out of the Virginia facility with a bag of prison belongings and a small compensation check. Clara drove him to a diner. Foe realized are destroying their future. Ladies and gentlemen, are the first time. He ate breakfast that didn't arrive through a slot. He ate slowly. He already knew what came next. Law school. The bar exam. 2 attempts. Then the first case. A 24-year-old man, wrongfully convicted. 7 years served. Marcus reviewed the file on yellow legal pads. He thought better that way. By Sunday evening, he had a plan. Tuesday, he visited the prison. He knew the smell of the room, the light, the posture of someone who had stopped expecting help. Marcus asked the right questions. He won the case. Outside the courtroom, he shook the man's hand. No performance, just a handshake. More cases followed. One of them was a man named Elijah, 29 years old, 6 years served for robbery. After Marcus explained the case strategy, Elijah asked a question. How do you know what this feels like? Marcus gave the short version. XBI, CIA, framed, convicted. 14 years, exonerated. Elijah looked at him for a long time. Then he said, so you became the person who does for other people what nobody did for you in time. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Then he said quietly, yeah, something like that. 8 months later, Elijah walked free. Marcus took a photograph. It went on the wall. There were 23 photos now. 23 people who walked out. The drawer still held a longer list. Both were necessary. Sometimes Marcus thought about Cole. He stopped being angry around year 8. Not because anger wasn't justified, because he couldn't afford to carry it. Rodriguez sent him an email after the exoneration. 2 sentences. I heard what happened. I didn't forget what you did. Marcus read it twice and saved it in a folder. A folder for things he needed to remember were real. Marcus Webb is 60 now. He has been an FBI agent, a CIA officer, a criminal associate, a prisoner, a man on death row, an exonerated defendant, and now a lawyer. It isn't the life he imagined at 26, but it's the life he has. You don't get 14 years back. They happened. All you can do is decide what you do next. Marcus has an office, a bar card, a wall of photographs, a drawer with a list, case files, a legal pad, a pen, a cup of coffee that will be exactly the right temperature in about 4 minutes. He remembers Davis pressing his hand against the wall, Rodriguez hearing 4 words in a parking garage, the tapping through concrete that proved he wasn't alone, Garrett's orientation, Clara's letter, Elijah's sentence. He has all of it. And it is not a small amount. Marcus opens a case file. He picks up his pen, writes the first note, underlines it, turns the page. His name is Marcus Webb, and the story begins here. And it ends here too. With a man who has a name, a career, and a life that makes sense again. Different name, different career, different life. But every story has a Marcus. Maybe you know one, maybe you are one.